It's 9:40. These are very short sessions, so I'm going to get started. And Ashley, you want to start the chat box so people can maybe, if they have any questions or comments, they can use that chat box. Welcome to the COVID-19, the impact of COVID-19 on the military and veteran community. That's the name of our session. My name is Kristin Musch, and I am a case manager with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Arizona. I've been with the coalition for many, many years since the creation of it, and it's just such an amazing organization that I'm excited to continue being part of it. This session is going to be about the impact that COVID-19 has had on the military and veteran community. And of course, as we know, because we're living it, we've all had a significant impact. And we really want to look at, in this session, what type of impact has been on the military veteran, the community statewide, service members, veterans and their families, and look at the impact from the perspectives of housing and homelessness and food insecurity organizations, including ways that organizations collaborated and adapted to meet the vital community needs amidst the pandemic. And this is important, and we want to hear from you, the audience, because we know that people who are attending this symposium often have a wealth of experience. So please participate when we get to the Q&A session. I'd like to start out, and I'm going to introduce, we've got two fabulous presenters today. I'm going to introduce both of them at once, and then we'll be going through their presentations. First of all, with the Arizona Housing Coalition, we have the Chief Programs Officer, Shane Groen. Shane is the Chief Programs Officer for the Arizona Housing Coalition, and he's a veteran of the United States Navy. He has an MBA in management from Western International University. And prior to joining AZHC, he worked on the semiconductor industry, managing logistics. He currently oversees the Arizona Veterans Stand Down Alliance, which facilitates the largest stand down in the country, as well as 10 others throughout the state. Most recently, AZHC contracted with the Arizona Department of Veterans Services, with Shane coordinating the implementation of the Arizona Plan to End Veterans Homelessness in Arizona, as well as a Veteran Toolkit program. And we also have Lauren Tomlinson, she's the Mobile Distribution Manager for St. Mary's Food Bank. Lauren Tomlinson is the Mobile Distribution Manager for St. Mary's Food Bank. I already said that once. She has experience working as a volunteer coordinator, development manager, data analyst, board member, and more. She completed her undergraduate at Purdue University and her Master's of Nonprofit Management at Regis University. Currently, she supervises the home delivery program, which delivers food in a door-to-door model, and the mobile distribution program, which hosts pop-up food distribution throughout Arizona. So as you can see, we're going to be hearing really from the people who are on the front lines and what kind of things they're doing to work with our community, specifically the military veteran population. So we're going to go ahead and start with Shane. And any questions, like I say, we'll keep those to the end. And if you have any questions, address those as we go along. So thank you very much. Go ahead, Shane.
Thanks, Kristin. Thanks, Ashley. And thank you all for being here. Just appreciate your interest in these topics. And so I'm gonna just talk a little bit about the coalition briefly, and then I'm gonna run through some slides of kind of housing insecurity in Arizona and some national statistics. And it's not all veteran specific, because not all of it is drilled down to veteran specific, but I think it's just beneficial information. And then I'll be dropping some links to resources in the chat later on in the session, and hopefully we can just have a good discussion about any questions you might have at the end of the session. So next slide, please. So we're a collaborative association that leads the efforts to end homelessness and advocate for safe, affordable homes for all Arizonans. We're a small organization, 6 staff, but I like to think we do big things, and we kind of have the 3 primary objectives to really educate, and train, and provide networking opportunities around the issues that are important to the organization. We do a lot of advocacy for our 200+ member organizations. A lot of that is legislative work at the kind of local, state, national level. And then we do a lot of collaborative work, and that's a lot of what I'm involved in with the stand down and with our work with AZDVS. So I'll probably talk a little bit more about that through the slides, but that's just kind of a nutshell of what our organization is about. Next slide, please. So as you probably know, I mean, one of the impacts of COVID is that there's a point in time, HUD kind of organizes and oversees a point in time homeless count every year across the whole country. And, you know, we do that in Arizona, and we go block by block with teams of volunteers, and we count our homeless. And, you know, it's not a perfect system by any means, but it's kind of become the benchmark for our homeless numbers across the state. And so 2019, January was the last good count that we had. And on that, for that count, there was just over 37,000 veterans that were homeless in America across the country. So 37,252. And that was a slight uptick from 2019. And so just a little backstory on homeless veteran numbers. From 2010 to 2016, we saw a 46% reduction across the country in our homeless numbers. And since then, we've really stalled out. And I believe that we're going to see an uptick. And we don't have a ton of data to support that just yet, because so many things were on hold in terms of outreach and counts and all these things through the pandemic. So as that information becomes available, I'm concerned that we're going to see an uptick. But just for this slide specifically, so January of 2020, we had just under 11,000 people experiencing homelessness in Arizona on any given night. 14% are chronically homeless. By HUD's definition, that's more than a year homeless, or 4 episodes of homelessness in the last 3 years. 11% of that 11,000 people were veterans. So most of you probably know this, but across the country, about 7% of our population are veterans. Some states have higher representations, and in Arizona, we're one of those states, a very veteran-friendly state, I believe, and so we have a 9% veteran population. So even so, all that said, 11% is an overrepresentation of that population. You know, there's any number of reasons that we attribute that to, you know, but obviously things that are experienced in the military can lead to substance abuse, can lead to isolation from families, and, you know, PTSD, a lot of these things where veterans are kind of more likely, or could be more likely, to become homeless. So 18% had serious mental illness, 18% substance abuse, and 2% HIV/AIDS, 21% victims of domestic abuse. So that's just kind of a nutshell of our homeless picture in Arizona just over a year ago. Next slide, please. So I'll kind of breeze through these next 2 slides pretty quick, but they'll be available if you're interested in them. But this one is just a graph that represents affordable housing in our country. And so this is for every 100 extremely low income renter households. The number that you see in each state is the number of affordable housing units that are available for those 100 individuals. So as you can see, Nevada is the most dire with only 18, then California with 23, and we're tied for 3rd with Florida at 26. So we are way on the wrong end of that spectrum. Next slide, please. And so this is just kind of a representation of the I guess housing or hourly wage that you need to afford a 2-bedroom rental house. And so in Arizona, that's at $21.10, obviously far above our minimum wage. And you can just kind of look at those different wages across the country, but we're in the mid-range of that, where California, and it looks like, you know, some of the West Coast in general is on the higher end for those, and Northeast. Next slide, please. So specifically around the coronavirus and housing insecurities, kind of the short-term impacts that we've seen are increased housing loss caused by economic insecurity and income loss. Individuals experiencing homelessness are vulnerable to the COVID-19 virus, and communities are grappling to secure quarantine and shelter options. Confusion around the eviction moratorium, which I'll talk a little bit about. And the longer term effects are loss of existing housing units, halt of affordable housing plans and projects, and what we strongly believe will be a large increase in homelessness. Next slide, please. So we'll talk a little bit about evictions and the eviction moratorium. Once again, Arizona is kind of what I would consider on the wrong end of this piece as well in terms of our eviction rates. We're one of the higher states in the country on evictions. And so let's go ahead and go to the next slide, and I'll just talk a little bit about the moratorium and some of the things that have been going on. So sorry for the typo on that date, the effective date. The moratorium is not in effect for 100 years. It should have just been 6/30/21, not 21/20. But that was just recently extended. It was set to expire at the end of March, and initially it was set to expire at the end of December, and they kind of keep pushing that back. And so I think that there's real good things about that, and there's some negative things, and kind of depending where you stand on some issues. A lot of mom and pop landlords and landlords in general are being put in a bind when people aren't paying their rent. So the moratorium can negatively impact them. There are resources for those individuals, but I had a COVID call. It was daily for a long time when COVID started, and then we kind of went to less frequently, and then it was weekly. But one of the things we heard over and over from a lot of our veteran service organizations as soon as the moratorium was put into place is that some of our veterans at these housing providers just stopped paying their rent because they knew that they couldn't be evicted. And so I'm not painting anyone in a negative light. I just think that that's a real issue that's been a concern, and it's been very taxing on providers. But at the same time, because this moratorium has been in place, like it's allowed a lot of people that are genuinely struggling and couldn't make their rent to not be forced into homelessness. So there's good and bad, but this moratorium does supersede the state moratorium. It applies to evictions for non-payment of rent, fees, and charges, and blocks all stages of eviction, including filing for it. And applies to all standard rental housing, including mobile homes and parkland. Tenants are still liable for their rent plus late fees. So that's just an important side note. So next slide, please. So there is some responsibility for renters, and they need to be aware of this, that they're not automatically protected, and they need to provide their landlords with a written declaration if they're unable to pay their rent. And they need to apply for rental assistance. And there's a number of programs, like I said, and I've become, over the years with the organization, I've become much more of a programmatic kind of managing some of our programs with our partner agencies. And so my colleague Joanna, which her information I believe is on my final slide, she has been at the forefront of so much of this work with the CARES Act funding, with the moratorium legislative work down at the Capitol. And so I put her information in there if you have questions specifically for her, because she's put together these monster documents for resources and who can apply for what and what's available. And she's just done a tremendous amount of work. So she would have been my pick to do this presentation, but she's presenting like 2 times a day, it seems like right now. And so she was just double booked. So I went ahead and did it, but you are just all being shorted by having me instead of her. I want you to know. So basically, I think in a nutshell, as far as the moratorium goes, most of the homeless service providers and veteran service organizations kind of in agreement that when this moratorium ends, we're very concerned that there's going to be what many people have referred to as a tsunami of evictions, and we could see a pretty drastic spike in our homeless numbers, which is going to be pretty devastating, just the social and personal impact on so many individuals, but also on all of the providers across the state. So we're very cognizant of that, very concerned about that, and we're working very hard to mitigate that in any way we can. But I'll mention one other very interesting side effect that we've seen of this moratorium that we've just noticed in the work and in conversations is that these evictions that occur kind of free up housing stock for a lot of the individuals that are transitioning from the streets into housing. They go into these apartments that people are evicted out of. And with this eviction moratorium, we've noticed that the housing stock has decreased, and those units that would generally be available are not available to move people in. And obviously that's a problem on a whole bunch of levels. You know, if you're waiting for people to be evicted so you can house other homeless, because then you're just kind of creating a cycle of I don't know, a very non-productive cycle. So that's something that we've been looking at as well, but it was just an interesting thing that we've discovered over the last year throughout this pandemic. Next slide, please. Yep, so that's it for me. There's Joanna's information, my information. Feel free to email us anytime with any questions you have related to veteran homelessness, work that's being done, available resources, all of those things. And like I said, while Lauren's presenting, I might just drop some resources with just little notes on what they are in the chat box if anyone is interested to check those out. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Shane. Boy, it looks like we have a lot. Your work is not done, is it? You've got a lot.
No, I unfortunately have job security. Yeah.
Gosh, man, no kidding. There were quite a few people who entered after we started, so I just want to remind everybody that if you have questions, that you will need to use the chat box. Everybody is on mute, so we're using the chat box for any questions. And now I would like to introduce Lauren Tomlinson with St. Mary's Food Bank. Take it away, Lauren.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I'm so excited to be able to be here with the Arizona Coalition for Military Families and talking about food resources that we have in Arizona. Go ahead and do the next slide, please. There's all of my information. It'll also be at the end, and I know it's in the lobby as well. But feel free if you have any questions. I gave my cell phone because I'm on the road a lot, and you'll find that out a little bit. And so sometimes texting or email is probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. Go ahead and do the next slide, Ashley. Awesome. So a little bit about me. I've been working or volunteering in the nonprofit social sector for over 11 years, kind of as Kristin mentioned, a lot of professional experience, board development, branding, volunteer engagement, etc. I've probably done it. I have my bachelor's from Purdue University and then my master's in nonprofit management from Regis. And I'm super passionate about food insecurity and collaborating with partners in an effort to really just make it work. Knowing that growing up, I experienced food insecurity with my family and then when I was in university. So really you'll see me out on the front lines overall. I oversee our home delivery team and our mobile distribution team, which we'll go briefly into both. And I've been with St. Mary's Food Bank for just under 5 years, in this role for over a year. And again, really strong believer in being a working manager. And so if you connect with me afterwards, or if we have phone calls for different things, oftentimes I'm not in my desk. I am out in a car or a vehicle on my way to our service area. So go ahead on next slide, Ashley. Okay, so St. Mary's Food Bank, our mission is to alleviate hunger through the gathering and distribution of food while encouraging self-sufficiency, collaboration, advocacy, and education. Go ahead, next slide. We cover 81,000 square miles of territory right now. So that's our service area, primarily working with over 800 agency partners throughout Arizona. And we distribute food in 13 Arizona counties. So the St. Mary's Regional Food Bank is for everywhere in the red. And there are 3 other Feeding America food banks in Arizona: United Food Bank, Community Food Bank of Southern Arizona, and as well as Yuma Community Food Bank. Next slide. How the pandemic impacted food insecure households. We saw higher volume of families and households needing food assistance. Pre-pandemic, St. Mary's Food Bank had never distributed more than 10 million pounds of food per month. Since the pandemic, we've exceeded 10 million pounds of food that we've distributed every month. So we've grown a lot. we've received a lot of higher number of calls about people and families who weren't able to get food, who needed food resources, new clients overall, and it was more easily identified that there are large hunger relief gaps, even within our programming. Go ahead and the next slide. So how did food banks respond? We responded in a couple of different ways. First, we adjusted our distribution models at our warehouse and trained partner organizations throughout Arizona on best practices to provide no contact distributions, limited contact distributions, and to really maintain social distancing. Next slide. We also expanded traditional food programming distribution throughout Arizona. We began partnerships with our community organizations who had access to food insecure families with a passion for collaborating and working together. We expanded a lot in our tribal regions. We were able to collaborate more with other community partners, such as the Arizona Coalition, to be able to do food distributions and to provide food access to people in need. Go ahead and next slide. We also launched an expanded home delivery program for families living in Maricopa, Pinal, and Yavapai County. So the home delivery program provides up to weekly food deliveries. It's an online registration and it brings the food to families. We operate Monday through Friday for deliveries. We have a pretty big window, about 6 to 6 for food delivery. So they kind of have to be a little bit available, but it is for if they're unable to get to the food bank, it's an option to be able to bring food out to them. Next slide, please. And then we also invested how families can find food resources nearest to them. And so I don't know if we go into the 3 different links overall, and Ashley, I might need to share my screen to do that. But actually we'll wait. But the first one for the arizonafoodbanks.org/gethelp, that's going to show resources of food distributions throughout Arizona. It's going to bring in, and you can search that by your zip code of where you're at. And then even go down one more to see if you needed food boxes, hot meals, home meals, infant resources, cooperative boxes. And so really kind of going in drills down into the resources available. The azfoodhelp.org is our tribal food map. So that's something that we've been working not only with ourselves, but the regional food banks throughout that are kind of on the border areas. The Navajo Nation stretches past Arizona, as many of you know. And so it's to be able to help announce when we're having food distributions throughout the tribal communities. And then our website, firstfoodbank.org/gethelp. One of our goals is to do a lot of pop-up mobile pantries that we do either ourselves or we work with amazing partner organizations that don't have the ability to store food, so they can't be open regularly, but they host monthly, weekly, bi-weekly distributions in the community. And so you can have access to that calendar as well from our website. Next slide. And then last but not least, St. Mary's Food Bank also offers 2 job training programs. And if you haven't heard of them, one is brand new to the organization and one we've had for a while. The Community Kitchen is a culinary program. So students learn the skills for culinary and to be able to get that experience for job placement. And the LIFT is our new warehousing training program. So they'll get forklift certified, they'll learn about inventory and be able to gain skills and practical knowledge to be able to translate into warehousing. Both of those programs offer job placement and job mentorship for a lifetime for students. So even if you graduated and became unemployed, they'll be able to have the resources to help find a new position. We've had Community Kitchen for a very long time at St. Mary's Food Bank, but with the pandemic, obviously the hospitality and the food industry was hit the hardest. And so we knew we had to develop a new program to be able to help. And that's where we found out about and we started offering the warehousing program. And so we are on our first class of students for the warehousing program right now, which is exciting. And then next slide. And that's it. So pretty easy, but we are really just excited to start working and continue to working with community partners throughout Arizona. Arizona Coalition is going to be doing a series of pop-up food distributions throughout Arizona. And so if you are interested or need food resources, just know that there are a lot of opportunities around the state right now. So.
Lauren, I would notice that on the slide where you had the links, that at least the bottom two, it looked like Ashley could probably click into those. Would that be helpful to?
Yeah, go for it.
You can kind of walk us through some of those resources. That's amazing. Those resources and those training programs, that's fantastic. I had no idea that St. Mary's did those training programs.
Yes.
Exciting. So it looks like I don't know that we can get into the first one, but the AZ Food Help, it looked like when you hovered over it, Ashley, it looked like it linked.
And as I say, or I can, actually, let me share my screen, Ashley, because I have them all up right here. So, okay, does everyone see the map right now? Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. So this is the first one, is the Arizona Food Bank Network Get Help food. And so right here, you'll be able to select your zip code or write your zip code, or just be able to see what different programs are offered, whether that's food boxes, on-site meals, again, home meals and home deliveries, where that would be. And other food assistance programs, it talks about SNAP, food boxes, WIC, and a lot of different food resourcing in general. And then this is our tribal food distributions. So you can be able to see in which tribal communities that there are food distributions throughout the state and search by that, or just seeing where we have this week, next week, or next month, and then it will update. And then right here, this is where you would find our mobile pantries there. So we have a monthly calendar with our mobile pantries. It's also where you'd go to schedule your home delivery. I apologize, my team's chat, everyone is apparently in the office today. So, but this is also where you'd be able to sign up for your home delivery if you needed someone to do a home delivery. For right now, with the home delivery program, you do need to sign up each time. So it does qualify for weekly home deliveries, but the people, or for home deliveries, you would need to register for each week. As we look at, this was brought to us thanks to a lot of funding due to COVID. We've been able to expand the home delivery program, and we're working on making it a permanent infrastructure within our system, in our organization. But for right now, it's a sign up each time that you need it. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, do we have any questions? If you have questions, if you'd please use the chat feature. You can find that at the bottom. You should see that at the bottom of your screen. And you'll see that Shane has left several resources there that you can copy and paste into a document if you'd like to do that. And in the meantime, while we're waiting for questions, Shane and Lauren, any comments, any additional information you wanted to provide? Or I'll ask a question.
No, I looked up something real quick, and I noticed that it said that Phoenix is actually #1 in the country as of March of this year for evictions. So that's a little bit of a scary thing. And I think Houston was right behind us. But just to kind of piggyback on what I was saying about concerns around when this moratorium ends, I can't remember the specific numbers because they varied. A lot of people have kind of put studies out, but I think there's 1.2 million rental home households in Arizona, something close to that. And I believe as many as 200,000 of them are behind on their rent right now. So just to give you a little perspective on, the potential kind of impact when this moratorium ends, and how many, obviously not all of them are going to get evicted, but even a small portion of that could be pretty devastating for our service providers. So just a little bit of additional information on that front.
Wow, that's really sad. All right, well, I have a question for you. So I know a lot of times people express discomfort on giving cash to, say, panhandlers, but they really want to help. People really want to help. They have compassion. They do want to help. And I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on that, options, information to provide people as far as the resource, because clearly, look at the information you provided us today. There are lots of resources out there. And maybe what some of the challenges are that people are not accessing those resources.
Yes, I don't know if Lauren has any, do you want to go first and I'll piggyback?
Yeah, we always suggest to provide food or water, something easy to be able to. There's been a great group here in Flagstaff, Arizona, actually, that has, he carries around water and some hygiene kits, socks, different things to be able to pass out in need. So if you have that capacity, that's always a good resource. Or of course, Arizona 211 can help show and help lead you to the nearest congregate meal, different resources available overall.
Yeah, I mean, I think I totally agree, and I think the panhandling question is a very loaded question. A lot of people have very strong opinions about it, and so my kind of usual suggestion is just like be compassionate, and however that looks for you, like obviously generally we would encourage someone to give money to an organization that is working to end homelessness in Arizona. And oftentimes when you give money directly to an individual that's struggling with addiction or what have you on the street corner, you may be, inadvertently perpetuating their homelessness. And, with fentanyl and all this other stuff that's going on, I would never want to be the one that gives an individual money that gets him the hot shot, and so I think that that's just something to consider. And that's not to say that we don't know what they're going to use this money for. And so it's up to the individual whether or not they want to do that. But I think the food or water or like a little blessing bag, with socks and something in it, and keeping a few of those in your car is a great idea, just to help people that are hurting, but also maybe have a business card for 211, like Lauren said, in there so that they can call and get connected to resources. Because that's our goal, is to get them connected, to get them into the coordinated entry process where they're receiving the resources that they need, rather than just continuing to kind of languish on the streets. And that's really what it ends up being, if they're just out on the corner day in and day out, especially in our 10-month-long summers. So I think that's just something that we can all work together on. And there have been programs throughout the country. Albuquerque had a really unique program where they would pick up panhandlers and give them day labor work at their recycling plant. I think that there's interesting approaches out there, and obviously not everyone that's panhandling has the ability to work. And so those are just things to consider. But one thing I don't support is ticketing panhandlers or those that give them money, and both of those have been tried and they're not successful, and it just clogs up our court system. And I don't know, I think that's a unproductive approach. But yeah, just caring about others and plugging in and supporting them in whichever way you can, how you see fit.
That's great information. And Ashley, are there some other questions in the chat?
Yes, we have started getting a few questions, and our first one is from Angel Johnson, saying, I noticed one slide stated that new housing initiatives have been stalled due to COVID. Any clue on when these projects will be started again?
Wait, was this for me or for Lauren? Home delivery, so that's Lauren.
Angel,
so this one was
that one is you, Shane.
Yeah, this one's housing initiatives. So it's stated that new housing initiatives have stalled due to COVID. So when might those projects be started again?
So I think that a lot of those projects have already begun or resumed work, but I think in the initial phases of the pandemic, a lot of work stalled out, and it was just due to uncertainty about the future. Like on a personal level, like we were getting ready to sell our home when the pandemic started, and there was all these, I'm getting 10 calls a day sometimes for, we want to buy your house in Central Phoenix, blah, blah, blah. And all of that just dried up, and Zillow and these big buying platforms stopped, buying homes for cash and all those things, because there was just so much uncertainty. And it was the same in the construction side. And so I think that much of that work has resumed now, but there was a delay. Anytime there's a delay, you get like bottlenecks of things that didn't come through on time, and housing stock that we had hoped for that isn't yet here. But I think for the most part, that's all resumed.
Great. And then we have one more question for you, Shane. It's from Penny Toro. Where can a behavioral health provider look for housing resources for our members?
Behavioral health. So, you know, like I think ABC is kind of the first and foremost in my head for Arizona Behavioral Health. What is ABC? Do you remember, Ashley, what the acronym stands for? But ABC is like the biggest mental health provider of services, and they're great. And so I think that would be a great resource. But really, coordinated entry, like if you're looking for housing resources, just go through the coordinated entry process at the Human Service Campus. Like that's, you know, for veterans, it's at the CRRC, so the Community Resource and Referral Center for the VA, which is at 1500 East Thomas. And, you know, that's kind of the one-stop shop for all things homeless for veterans and related to housing resources. But if it's a broader homeless question with mental health issues, you know, like the campus is the coordinated entry point, and that's where anyone should start. They should go down there, get a VI SPDAT, get assessed, and see what resources are available for them. I saw one other question from Ricardo. How is the mayor responding to the city's homelessness? And so Mayor Gallego has been a long time supporter, and she, years ago when she was, I think, a councilwoman, her and her then husband, Ruben Gallego, would come to Stand Down and would, you know, talk to the veterans on site, and kind of like they would help out with our closing ceremonies. And so especially veteran homelessness is near and dear, as I believe Congressman Gallego is a former Marine. And so I think that veteran homelessness is very important to both of them, ending veteran homelessness. But she's been a champion of the work that's being done. I was just a week or two ago at a Native American Connections grand opening facility, beautiful, over on Dunlap and 16th Street, 12th Street. And Kate was there, Mayor Gallego was there and spoke to the group. And you know, like she's been a great supporter of the work that's being done to end homelessness, and they're doing a lot of work out of her office to support that work. So I'm a fan.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Shane, you know, I was thinking when you were talking about the CRRC and the coordinated entry point, can you put that information in the chat so that people have access to that? If I don't know if it's an accessible link or something like that, but
yeah, let me see if I can find something. I have a flyer from the CRRC, so anybody that wants that too can just shoot me an email and I'll send you an updated flyer as well.
Great, because it's nice to have those resources. You never know when you're going to need them, so it's good to have, you know, a variety of resources at your fingertips. Because the opportunity, the window is sometimes very short when somebody's asking for help.
Absolutely, and the CRC is just great people down there, and they care deeply for veterans, and they really have a beat on any and all resources that are available for veterans that are kind of in a tricky spot or in a tight spot in terms of income or housing or, you know, all of the above. So that's definitely the place to start.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much. If there are no other questions, I really would like to thank our two presenters, Lauren and Shane. Thank you so much for the valuable information and for the important work that you're doing. And I also want to thank Ashley, who's our wonderful facilitator. She does a great job. She's with the Arizona Coalition and has been for years and is quite expert at everything she does. So thank you so much, Ashley. And if that's all we have, we'll end just a couple of minutes early, which will give everybody a chance to fluff their hair or whatever they want to do before the next Zoom meeting.
And I'm also going to pop in a quick survey link. If anyone would like to take a survey on this session and let us know what you thought, and if you have any feedback, that'd be great. And if you have any questions on how to get back to the event center, you just go where you started this morning to find your next breakout session.
I just put Jeff Wilgale's information. He's kind of one of my primary points of contact at the CRC. He'll love that I did this, so that's great. But you can reach out to him directly, or feel free to reach out to me, like I said, for more information on the CRC.
All right.
Thank you for being here. Have a great day.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.